Welcome, Red Spotters. Another show here on the Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. David Francisco. And we're here to do the first in a series of recaps for the brand new television series by Marvel Studios, WandaVision, currently streaming on Disney+. We had been teasing this for a couple of weeks now about something we were interested in, and here we are to talk about the first two episodes, which were part of the premiere for WandaVision. So I believe they had confirmed that it would be 9 episodes in total. So if we're going to, and I do believe they're going to be dropping at least, I think, one a week. So we have around, I would say 7-ish weeks, 7, 8, I think maybe probably one of the 7 or 8 weeks or 7 or 8 episodes to go. So yeah, David and I are huge fans of Marvel. I think, to a certain extent, everybody on the panel on Red Spotlight is a huge fan of Marvel, whether it be the Marvel Cinematic Universe films or the Marvel Entertainment Production television shows that were discontinued, I think, with the end of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. last year. I know David and I covered the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with our Beyond the S.H.I.E.L.D. series. If you're also a fan of that show, I would strongly recommend you go watch it, as well as listen to our content covering it from last year. But honestly, this was kind of a gamble because we had been really, really curious and interested in just about every aspect of, teases they were giving us of this show. And, before we even saw the episodes, we just thought it was a good idea to just go ahead and do this, and just recap it because everyone's going to be talking about it. And unlike Mandalorian, I think we might have a little bit more of an interest and a capacity to care in this instance than perhaps than the other ones, because I said it at the top, you and I are both fans of the MCU movies, and I definitely am a fan of the characters Wanda and Vision. I know a lot of people, not I think anyone on our panel, but it is a common talking point, one of the many annoying popular talking points that people like to levy against the particular Russo brothers Marvel movies, or just the Marvel movies in general, with how they treat certain characters. I know you and I, particularly when Endgame was released, were very, how shall I put this, triggered by how some were interpreting the Black Widow sacrifice sequence. I know you in particular were pretty pissed off with how certain people were choosing to talk about what that scene was and everything. So there's a bunch of quirks here and there that people have, but while they never got their own movie, with their appearances in Age of Ultron, Civil War, and Infinity War, I have to say that I think Wanda and Vision were probably among the better of the relationships that they've had. I mean, if we look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think for me, just off the top of my head, of romance relationships, that because there were some that were just really half-assed and then dropped entirely along the way, but I think cream of the crop would have to be Steve and Peggy, Peter, Quill, and Gamora, and then there's Wanda and Vision. I think those three in particular, I think are a great example of the kind of romantic relationships that those kind of movies I think really need. And unfortunately, there are other relationships in the MCU, of course, but they're just not as potent or believable as those three are. I mean, the other one that does come to mind, of course, is, it needs no mention, but of course there's Tony and Pepper. So there's that one as well. That being said, just as a long preamble, I love these characters, and that in and of itself had me interested in this project. How about you?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, when they announced the show, I thought I was really excited for it because Wanda's character went through so much on these movies, and there was so much potential. And I mean, I would have liked to seen her own movie, but so far I'm really glad of where they're going with this show and everything. And their relationship, I feel like it was, I guess you could say it was better set up than some of the others. I mean, I liked Tony and Pepper's relationship. They have great chemistry together, but there was nothing really in it that made me kind of go that the relationship was going to go badly or anything like that, or that it was going to end badly. So like, it was just, that's like it was, what's the word? I don't know. I guess like you knew whether it was going to end with them. Right.
Basically. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking.
Yeah. It was heartbreaking in the end, but like it was, I guess, needed in this story. With them too, like, they I like that they kind of told the line of like, is there something here? Is there something not? And they kind of, even though they kind of threw you in Infinity War, you cared about them like right from the very end.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll say this, with Infinity War in particular, I think they damn near steal the show for me. Because, and that isn't of course to take away anything from Peter and Gamora, because that relationship also has kind of a finale, or kind of a conclusion in that sense, because of course Gamora is murdered or sacrificed, depending on your point of view, and that was that to me, every time I see it, it's still shocking. I remember the first time I saw that sequence and I was just shocked that happened, and still every single time. But and there are great moments of different varieties of emotions, that's for sure, in the movie, but in particular with Wanda and with Vision. It may just be entirely because of Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen that they just sold me on the relation. Plus, with the previous films, you knew where that thing was going, and so it just felt natural to see those two having basically started a relationship with each other. But I will say, what I wanted to get to is this. The emotional highlight, one that perhaps is not as discussed as, like, everyone talks about, Peter Parker, I don't want to go, that, like, gets people, like, crying and everything. But like, talk about, I think perhaps Wanda had to make the most difficult decision in that entire film, and then she still got burned for it. She had to kill the love of her life, basically, to save the universe.
I love that line Vision said. It's like, it was something like, it has to be you. I know it's not fair, but it has to be you, and everything. It's just like, oh my God. Like,
it's okay. You can never hurt me. I just feel you. That's how powerful and how memorable that moment was. And, with all of the added anticipation and anxiety at that point in the film, it just cranked it up to an 11. When you and the sequence where, Wanda's, trying to like at the same time push Thanos away, and then also trying to destroy the Mind Stone. With the music by Alan Silvestri swelling, honestly, it has to be one of my favorite moments in any Marvel movie, bar none, honestly. And I think that to me is when, Infinity War really, I think, becomes kind of phenomenal. I mean, it was already great, but like at that point, it's just like, wow, especially for those characters. So then what inevitably happens, so Vision died in the film, and the people who were brought back in Avengers Endgame were people who were snapped out of existence. And it didn't count the characters that we lost prior to the snap, like Loki, and Vision, and Heimdall, and others, of course. Gamora, the original Gamora. So when Endgame, I think the last time we see Wanda is she's having an exchange with Clint, and they're both basically because they kind of have a mentor-mentee kind of relationship in a way, and they're both basically grieving over their losses. She's grieving over Vision, and he's grieving over Natasha at that point, and they have that sweet little moment about how they both know that in the end they all won. But still, you can't help but feeling at the end of the day, Wanda was one of the ones that was robbed the most. In out of the events that happened in those films. So then the announcement of this TV show came along with, Disney Plus basically was created. And at that point, we all knew that here we go. Now the promise that they had made years ago with the original Marvel shows in 2013 with S.H.I.E.L.D., Carter, and then the Netflix shows that they never fulfilled because of bullshit politics reasons that, in my view, have no excuse. I've gone on the record, I think you have as well, that we stopped caring at a certain point and then just enjoyed the shows for what they were and appreciated them more. But there are a lot of people out there, you wouldn't believe it. If you go on Twitter, there are a lot of people out there that are just like really anal about this shit. In several different ways, I might add. In several different ways. Whether it be, I come across people who are so like super S.H.I.E.L.D. fan more than me, and that's saying something. Let me tell you, where they have where they have to like Photoshop this S.H.I.E.L.D. character into like a scene of the Avengers. Or on the other side of it, I come across people who are like, their whole identity is to basically hate this show because it's not sanctioned, quote unquote, by Kevin Feige. Therefore, it has no value.
Oh my god!
So it's like you see the kind of people that you find. But I think unfortunately that speaks to a larger point of view here, which I think has some merit in the fact that if you are fans of the cinematic universe, all of us were technically promised that, it's all connected. And we were waiting for it to be connected. And to be fair, that never came to the way that I think people wanted it to be. So with the creation of these Marvel Studios Productions television unit, here we go. Here's the beginning, basically, of all of this. Now, I don't necessarily care all that much about how much it connects versus how good the story is, the quality of the show that we're getting. I think you and I agree pretty unanimous with that, unlike others are more concerned with the Easter eggs, the connections to other stuff. And if you've heard our recent Mandalorian reviews, those of you listening, then I think you know where this is going, where many of us here on the channel have a pretty contrarian point of view when it comes to that kind of stuff. And, I'm going to try my best to be polite about it. I am. But believe you and me, it is trying to be patient and to be kind, because I've just grown so incredibly jaded and disinterested with that particular, I guess, sentiment, if you know what I mean. And with WandaVision, I'll tell you this, and I think you and I maybe, and as well as Peter, as well as Kyle, and maybe as well as Alexis, this was easily far and away, just based on the concept and everything that we were hearing from the details, the one that I was the most interested in. And then we got more and more images, and then we got footage, and then we got trailers. And I can tell you, They were good trailers. They were good trailers. They had some good posters too. They have amazing marketing. Let me tell you, the marketing for WandaVision is... I would buy a lot of the stuff I'm seeing online for, some of the critics got for WandaVision memorabilia. But there was a concern, of course, that the gimmick, quote unquote, I don't like calling it a gimmick, but I mean, I guess it kind of is with what they're doing. There was a concern that, see, for me anyway, that's the part that interested me the most about this project. Now, for some other people, that may be the least interesting thing about this. You see how we have to kind of toe the line between different audiences and what they want out of, a show like this. I guess it's weird because while I'm calling here the fans, or some subset of fans, they perhaps were fearing that a lot of it would be, oh God, it's going to be nothing but sitcoms. People like me would go like, well, that sounds fucking amazing. I don't know what you're talking about. That's kind of what I want out of something like this. Yeah. I assume you've had similar concerns going into this before you saw it? Or you were probably, maybe you were more optimistic about it.
Actually, I think I had the same concerns as Peter did. He was more, like he said, he was more worried that the whole gimmick of it was just going to last maybe 2 or 3 episodes.
Right.
But as far as we're seeing, it's going to last maybe at least halfway, which I don't mind. I was really excited about this concept because, like I said, it really reminded me of like the weirdness of Doom Patrol.
Right, which is a show that you really love, and maybe one we should think about doing as a review series since it's on HBO Max, and there's 2 seasons on, right?
There's 2 seasons.
Right.
I haven't seen the second season. I don't think I've heard much about it, but the first season for sure. It's great. I love it. But yeah, it was just that, like, the gimmick of it was just my concern that it wasn't going to last very long. But so far, I am going to the optimistic side that it's going to last a pretty long while.
Right. Well, I guess, just to make sure, I like to do these preambles. I think it helps me clean the clutter out of my mind and trying to get my thoughts straight. But I think it also would help those listening to this about, like, to be as clear as we can be about our feelings and our thoughts. And I think by just setting up these particular elements can help kind of guide our conversation along the way, right? So as I mentioned at the top, we're going to be discussing both of the episodes. And we're going to discuss each episode individually and our thoughts on it. And, but because we're covering 2 episodes, kind of like how we did with the S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, sometimes you'd cover, like, the finale would be, 2, but just before you dive into the individual, like, action of what happens, we like to do an overview, right? About what are your feelings? Okay. How do you feel about this just immediately? And I cannot tell you how blown away my expectations were. My expectations were about middle of the road. I was holding out hope, but I didn't want to let myself just, like, I didn't want to let myself get too high in expectations, because that can invariably be a recipe for disaster, as we have found out with other projects of late. But I have to say, and I believe I mentioned this in a podcast with Peter Martinez, that technically speaking is chronologically the one following this, but we recorded it before this one, so this may be a little wonky, but I told him that I loved WandaVision more than maybe I loved any movie last year. I
kind of agree with you.
Oh, shit. I love this so much. I you know how much I loved it? I watched the 2 episodes not once, not twice, but thrice. Thrice. I don't know who says thrice anymore, but I had to say it because it rhymed and I wanted to say it. But man, I just had to throw it out there. I love everything about this. And I am so incredibly happy. It makes me happy. All right. Those are my initial feelings. How about you?
No, yeah, I loved every second of it. It's really funny. Both Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen they fucking killed it. Oh my gosh. Especially Paul Bettany. I think he was the most surprising out of all of them. And just like it really worked. Like they really made it work. It's so great. My only complaint is that they still kept it way too big of a mystery. I just kind of wish we got just a little answer of what's going on.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe they did a little too much. Not like they gave. I don't think they gave anything away. And I understand.
Yeah.
They're throwing breadcrumbs out at you with these first 2 episodes. So like, sure, I get that. I guess to me, there is enough in the episode to like where they're really hinting at you like, wait, something else is going on here, because especially as we get into episode 2, there are several moments where things are not at all as what they appear to be, and then there's like Randall Park's voice that's just cutting through, and then there's like cutaways to someone watching what we're watching. So I feel like there's enough there. But as far as like the mystery aspect, I mean, I understand that, I guess, that particular frustration. And I know from you, it's coming from a place to where like you and I have a similar line of thinking about, you know, all of this. I guess at the front of it, if we're gonna go ahead and just start with that real quick, then we both seemingly loved it. Yes. So let's go ahead and start with that particular concern. As far as the mystery aspects are concerned, okay. Well, hold on. I need to back up here. I'm sorry. Save that for a bit. I just need to make sure people are understanding of this, because I have to also keep in mind people who may listen to this and may not be aware about what this actually is. So this is a sitcom, guys. This is a full-blown sitcom from the fucking 50s. We're talking about I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, Bewitched. Like, we're talking old school, like, class here in terms of what this is. And what we referenced earlier, and that would have been the shtick, right? If you want to call it a shtick or a gimmick. But the basic premise of this series is, after the events of Avengers Endgame, Wanda and Vision, I think this is in the synopsis, go away and live in a small town seemingly out of the 1950s. And if that sounds like bullshit to you, well, I mean, I think that's part of what's ingrained with the plot of the television series. But we will dive deeper into that. But for what you need to know with these first 2 episodes, they're sitcoms. They're full-blown sitcoms. They commit 100%, minus the several moments in which you're pulled out because of the deeper storyline that's going on and the mystery that's ingrained with the show. But for the most part, I honestly can't thank them enough. I can't thank them enough for committing to something different, committing to something new that they haven't done before. You know, they're a studio that is criticized often, and for the most part, fairly so, for, you know, not branching out and doing anything new that's well within the margins of the Marvel formula or outside of their comfort zone. This was way out there for them. And personally speaking, as somebody who I like has basically raised on sitcoms, I don't know if this was ever known. I know we've been doing Red Spotlight for 5 years, and I know that we've been friends for 5 years, but I don't even know if this was ever known because we just haven't spent much time with this genre of television. But I think for a while there, in my teenage years, the sitcom was my favorite genre of television series.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I think the same can be said for just about all of us here. I know with Peter, I have deep, deep roots with sitcoms. My mother's favorite show to watch on reruns would be I Love Lucy, and I would watch I Love Lucy reruns. And then there came other shows like Cheers or Frasier, The Golden Girls, Family Matters, Full House, The Cosby Show. Ugh, there's that. You get the point. And then later on, there would be shows like 2.5 Men, The Big Bang Theory. And then there's I guess the latest version of a sitcom would be adopting the mockumentary style, which would be Modern Family. Point is, I am someone who, The Nanny as well. That was really good. Who loves this kind of shit, eats it up. And I feel like that's why I was so interested in it. And needless to say that perhaps this was driving me to just full blown love it, because, and I think I want to stick on this sitcom angle here, because with let's say, we're not counting the sequences that are teasing the larger mystery. And if we're going to ignore the fact that they have a great, diverse cast, which, by the way, that is kind of a telltale sign that is not from the 50s and 60s, because, it was like white central all around on the television screen.
Yeah.
But putting all that to the side, if you didn't have the Marvel logo in front of it, and of course with those mysterious sequences taken out, you'd think you're watching something that was made in the 50s and the 60s. That's how I think authentic they feel.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, if it didn't have the Marvel logo, I would just think I'm watching a straight up sitcom with and I grew up with some sitcoms too. The one that's always a standout for me is Chavo del Ocho.
Oh yes, yes. Thank you for mentioning that one. And that one is not known. I will bet you that one is not at all well known by our good friends Kyle or Peter. They don't seem to be that ingrained with Mexican television. But El Chavo del Ocho, that is. I mean, I think I remember. I think you kind of unlocked a memory. I think I remember having this conversation with one of my uncles once, where El Chavo del Ocho, which was created by Chespirito, which is huge name in entertainment, family entertainment, as well as a comedian in Mexican culture. El Chavo del Ocho is the I Love Lucy of Mexican television. Mm-hmm. That is how storied of a legacy it has. And you and I, both being Mexicans, if I just know that that show, then I know you grew up on it, because I grew up on it. And that was one of the earlier ones for me.
Yeah. My dad told me all the time, he'll be playing outside, and then as soon as his mom will come outside, go, "Hey, it's on." Every kid in the neighborhood would just go back inside and they'll watch the show. Mm-hmm. That's how popular it became. Mm-hmm. It still holds up.
Yes, it does. Yes, and look, I struggle with particularly classifying a genre of humor. It is a sitcom, if you want to, for all intents and purposes, because it has a laugh track and everything. But holy crap, man, I know anytime that comes on, I can sit down and watch it. That's how big it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But no, again, the sitcom aspect of it, they really, really nailed it. And like I mentioned before, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, they nailed it. I thought Elizabeth Olsen was going to like really ham it up with the 50s housewives or something like that. But no, she was actually the most tame. The one that was like really hamming it up was that one lady.
Agnes?
The neighbor?
Yeah, Agnes. Agnes, played by Catherine Hahn.
She for sure was hamming it up, but it worked with her. Like it wasn't like annoying or anything. But Elizabeth Olsen, you know, you can tell she was putting on that 50s like housewife actress, but it still felt like it was her. Like it was still Wanda, basically. Is what I'm trying to say. And then Paul Bettany completely surprised me. I couldn't believe just how great his comedic timing was and everything. And that's kind of what made me love the show so far. It's just their chemistry.
Yeah, they're kind of the reason why it works at the end of the day, right? Is these performances. We have to, we got to keep in mind this. Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen did not sign up for this originally. They signed up to be in superhero movies. They signed up to be, in action sequences and full-blown makeup and, the works. Green screen, soundstage, whatever. And they were great. The performances, believe me, as we've mentioned earlier in the episode, they definitely came through all of that in those films. But holy shit, let me tell you something. And I know that every year somebody says this, that, because interesting, drama seems to be like the more revered genre of storytelling, whether it be in film and television. But oftentimes comedy is harder. And what they did, they made it look easy. And it ain't easy. It's not easy. I mean, in any era, getting yourself in that kind of a role, especially if you have no previous history with doing that, and especially with one that is supposed to be emulating some of the greats of all time, like the Dick Van Dyke Show or I Love Lucy. And I have to say, they just stepped into it effortlessly. And I got it, and I agree with you. There were moments where I was like, okay, they're teetering. Are they gonna like really go over the top with it, or are they gonna like? No, it felt really grounded, honestly. And let's be clear here: grounded for sitcom standards. If you don't have any previous exposure to sitcoms, perhaps you may and if you don't, and if you're watching this, God help you, because you. In that case, I perhaps would be more sympathetic with some less than stellar reactions because of the format that, brings a sitcom, and we can get into that in a bit. But no, when it comes to, they're great not just because they can deliver their lines with the format that it is, right? Not just because the humor also lands with it. But I guess to me, and this is why the show ultimately works, aside from all of the wonderful stuff surrounding it, is because those two characters are great, and they're greater together. And what really sells it is, I think Peter put this best, the tender moments that you see between that relationship. All the while in the back of your head, you understand this is all really fucking sad because Vision's dead. And this is all probably like an illusion that she's made up and it's gotten out of control. That seems to be the prevailing theory with the show, right? And it's very sad how much she loved Viz and how it's basically driven her mad. That's what people are suspecting. But at the same time, you see that love for him come out in these moments. You see it basically sprinkled all throughout the episode. But I'll tell you, the moments that I think worked on me the best are basically the last sequences of both of the episodes where they embrace each other. And there is a beautiful just romance between those two, that I know that we're basically looking at, like, I mean, it is Viz and it is Wanda, and you know, because they're in this sitcom environment, I guess you could argue that we're looking at like two different versions of them, but they really just feel like they're the same characters. There's like, they don't feel like a multiverse version of this or that. They're just the same, and that cracks through, really, in some moments. But when they embrace each other, you know, in the end of the episodes, like in the first one where they, we know,
get the rings.
right, when they get their rings with each other and they kiss and the music is swelling up, I got tears in my eyes, man. That's how beautiful that shit was. That's the kind of stuff I've been missing from these kind of movies. And don't you forget it. I love these films. I love these kind of movies, and I wish they had more of these moments like that in them. And even in the second episode, when she got up and she, you know, by the way, spoilers, I hope that should be obvious. When she gets up and she reveals that she's pregnant, I gasped out loud because I was so invested in the story and I was so happy for them. And then when the sequence where it turns to Technicolor, and it was Technicolor, I believe, you know, how bright it was. I'm sorry, man, that I love it. I love it. It worked so much on me, and that it's moments like that that made me say, and maybe perhaps would make you say, that this perhaps made more of an impression on me than anything last year did in film.
No, yeah. I remember watching it, and it's just really nice to kind of see, even though it's taking place in her head, basically, it was nice to see that this is how they work as a couple, like, somewhat, obviously, because like I said, in Infinity War, they just threw us into the relationship, and you know, they're trying to figure it out. They were trying to figure out, like, how the heck is this gonna work, but in the end, they accepted it. And so I think this is her, like, how she wishes it could be, if, like, once they actually did accept it and all that. And so it was just kind of nice seeing both of them act like a couple and all that. But like you said, though, too, at the same time, it is kind of sad because you can tell there are these, like, very, very little hints that she's that she's manipulating the whole thing, basically. But I mean, I like to think, though, that is Vision. I feel like we're gonna get something that it basically confirms that this is him the entire time.
Mm-hmm. I would hope so, because I am invested in them really at this point. And they're doing such a great job where, like, I guess you could say, well, damn, Marvel, you know, can't you, like, I don't know, keep your characters dead and then you got to bring them back? So, but in this case, I think I would more than allow it, you know, because of if, you know, it does live up to the creative direction that it's going to, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The show has heart, man. This show, it just feels alive. It feels alive, man. And I know I'm talking about, like, something that, and you know, as I mentioned before, that they're committing. It's presented in 4:3 aspect ratio, and it's in black and white. And honestly, man, it I don't know what it is. Like, remember how last year we talked about that noir episode that S.H.I.E.L.D. did? There's just something about, you know, making something black and white that makes it, I don't know, feel a little bit more alive. Even like it's and it's interesting how I'm sure there are people out there in the world who perhaps are, I don't know, they're fans of movies and TV shows, maybe not in the way that we are, but perhaps they may be turned off by media that is presented in this format because it perhaps could be misconstrued as obsolete. No, it really isn't. Yeah, that's the overview basically, and I guess we've already busted the door open and started talking about particulars, so we might as well just, you know, get it going with the first episode. And man, let's just go in sequence with what we're presented, right? We're given the Marvel logo, the Marvel Studios logo, fanfare. I don't know if I expected them to do like a more truncated version of it instead of like playing the full fanfare that we get for the movies, the MCU films. I'm fine with it. I kind of wish we got something a little bit, I don't know, just because it is a television series, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. I think this being a television series, I think would be, and it is proving to be a lot better than if this would have been a film. Let's be real. I think there's no question about that. This is a little nitpick, obviously, right? It's not a real criticism, but I just feel like they should have gone something a little bit more simple, I think, with this, instead of like, I know they want to like, sell the point that, oh, this is like officially in the MCU, but like, I don't know. I don't need the full like fanfare to play in front of every single episode. The first one I get, but all of them, whatever.
Yeah, it could probably get annoying. But I gotta be honest though, as soon as I heard it, like I missed it.
But that's true.
And it's
like
we always hear it all the time, like on like other movies, like when we did our Guardians 2 commentary. But like it was just nice seeing like that's coming from something new, but also you see like new shots on it.
That's right.
So it was nice. And I like the transition to the 4x3 black and white logo.
That was awesome.
Cool.
That was awesome.
But yeah, no, but I mean, I get what you're saying too. If we're gonna hear that every single episode, and if we were to binge watch it, it would get super annoying really quickly.
I imagine at some point we are going to binge watch this.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, like, I know with the Marvel Entertainment shows, like with Shield, they just had the comic book opening, right? So like they would have. The opening sequence would be the Marvel logo, the traditional Marvel logo, but with the sound effect of it being like a comic book. Like I think Logan in the X-Men films, I think had an opening like that when Fox was a thing, right? So yeah, and that was fast and simple, and they use it for the entire series. So that's just a minor quibble, but we'll see how that ages. But I'll tell you what, so we're talking about the first episode, right? So we're going in sequence. Oh my God, that theme song. Oh my God. I literally just about screamed when like they were doing an opening credits theme song, like, and again, it's one of those like classic sitcom tropes where like you basically, the origin story of the sitcom is the theme song. Like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Family Matters and everything. And the song is so good. I mean, both of them are, but I think I really love the first one in particular. But they're both written by the Lopez's, which if you don't know your Disney history, they're the Frozen people. They're the ones that wrote all the Frozen songs that you all know and love from both of the films and more. I feel, I don't know if the Emmys have a Best Original Song category, but this should be nominated. You know why it's so good? Because it lit like that. Those moments alone just sell you on like, you know what? From what you showed me right there, I don't need anything else. I could watch a whole television series of that show the way that it's presented as a 50s sitcom. And ultimately, and I don't want to jinx it because you know what? I'm more than open with, and the show is definitely going to go in different directions, going to go in different eras and explore all this stuff, and I'm sure it's going to be good. But I worry that perhaps the biggest detriment of WandaVision in the end would be that I may just want more of the sitcom, and then just because I mean I know Marvel fans don't necessarily, I'm getting the sense that they don't care for the sitcom format, but I do.
Yeah.
And I love it. And just based on that opening sequence and with these 2 episodes, I'm going to be honest with you. Just really honest with you. If they made 100 episodes of that sitcom format without like it leading anywhere and it just being a sitcom, I would be in heaven. I would be more than okay with that. I know that we all have like this desire for it to like, to be serialized rather than episodic. In that there's like this through line and a storyline and it's going in different directions. And look, we're going to be covering this show every week and we're going to be on a week-to-week basis talking about where it's going to go. But in an alternate reality, shall we say, I would not mind getting a WandaVision series the way that, in particular, the first theme song opens it up. What did you think of the theme song?
It was nice. I mean, like I said, music goes one ear out the other, so I can't really remember much. But I love the sequence of it though. Like they're driving to their house and everything, and you get this little bit of Vision like covering his face so that people doesn't see that he's a freaking robot.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and then you get like those little moments of her using her magic, and it's the 50s. It looks cheap. It looks kind of cheesy almost. Right. But it was so great, and I do like that you just kind of like, again, it tells you like right away, this is a show that you're watching. It's like, forget your Marvel shoot 'em explosions.
Off the bat, we start off with this really charming sequence of them in the kitchen, and look, those two had chemistry to begin with, and it got better as the films went, but man, this is an example of it getting better with every project they do. Man, they're on top of their game. Both of them are. And in surprising ways too, like, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because I expected them to be good. But they're even better than what I thought they were going to, how good they were going to be, I think, is how they were. And Paul Bettany, wow. Like, in particular, he is really adept at the comedy timing. Like, I don't know what it was, but like, he felt like a pro right there with all of the different, shenanigans that he was involved with the first episode. So, there's a classic sitcom trope where two characters, Wanda and Vision, they're having a conversation. They think they're talking about the same thing, but they're talking about two completely different things. And obviously, Wanda thinks that, Vision's having a conversation about them having an anniversary dinner that night of. And then, of course, Vision is talking about that. No, well, my boss invited himself for dinner and my job depends on it, which, by the way, that is so a 50s sitcom trope. And wow, how awful was that? Like that, I mean, I'm just, okay, so the boss can just invite himself for dinner and he can fire you if you don't please him. I'm sure that is grounds for some kind of abuse in this day and age, obviously. But for them, it was like, oh, you know how you are, and then they have this dynamic that it reminded me very much of an episode of I Love Lucy where Ricky Ricardo's boss from the Tropicana comes over and they have dinner and they're trying to impress him because he wants a promotion, he wants a raise, and at the end of that episode, I'm very proud of you, son, the boss says to Vision, and we'll see about that promotion and talk about it on Monday. So it literally comes right out of those sitcom tropes, very much so. But with Paul Bettany, man, the comedy timing is hilarious. So when like his coworker is like, he feels like he's being accused of being called a computer because he is a computer, and he overreacts, and then he catches himself when he realizes that what the event that night was, which would be to have dinner, have his boss come over for dinner. And then when they arrive at the house and everything is basically set up for a romantic evening in the most awkward way possible with like the lights turned down low, and then Wanda in this really, I guess you could say, sexy, for lack of a better word, nightgown that is intended for nocturnal activity, shall we say, and what was it? And then Paul Bettany's reaction was like, it's so Sokovian. That killed me, man.
Oh my god, it was so good. Yeah, no, I love that. Actually, I love that they played with the her Sokovian like
Right,
ethnicity.
her
I guess.
European background, basically.
Yeah, it was so great. And then the other stand-up moment for me for Paul is when he was trying to entertain his boss and his wife, and I think it was the wife that like opens the like I guess the window to the kitchen, and he just starts singing, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so great. And again, like everything here, like I've seen it many times in many other sitcoms, not just like I Love Lucy and everything, but it's so great. And just like it really is just a ginormous surprise to see Paul Bettany, who is like, it's Vision. It's like that's the funny part. It's like this is Vision, a super intelligent robot being funny and all that.
At the same time, we also have to compliment the writing, because I mean, Paul Bettany didn't write these jokes, but man, do they land really well. In that moment, you're talking about how like Paul Bettany's trying to distract his boss and the boss's wife from like, you know, catching on. And, you know, he's having them do sing-alongs. They're singing along to Old MacDonald Had a Farm. And one of the clever bits was when they're looking at his boss for like, you know, for the next animal to pick in that song. And like he just like gives this like, what the fuck are you doing? Like look on his face. And then, you know, to cut the awkward silence, Vision just says pig. And the boss, you could tell with like how he turns like, did you just call me a pig? He didn't say that, but like it was like the look that he gave Vision kind of felt that way. And it was hilarious too. How it came across. So no, Paul Bettany, he's surprised. He definitely surprised in the best way possible, you know. And that isn't to say that Elizabeth Olsen wasn't great as well. She had some moments as well. And you can tell, like, I feel like she really did her homework on like housewife characters in those, you know, sitcom eras. You know, she's not like not to caricature her as like a pushover, because she's not, and this is technically speaking her show. But there are moments where she's like part of her, I guess, sitcom voice is just so of the time. And then there are these little moments sprinkled in where you have like sound cues that you don't get at all anymore in television shows. One of my favorite ones where she's with Agnes. That's the neighbor that, you know, invites herself over, which that in and of itself is a trope. The annoying neighbor that invites himself over in these sitcoms. And they're going over basically a game plan for how to like woo Vision that night. And I love how the payoff for this line. So I think it was Agnes that says that, did you know that the death rate for single men is twice as high as married men? And then her immediate response, now that's romantic. I mean, that's cheesy, obviously, but that's definitely what sitcoms do. But what was more hilarious was when Wanda tried to use that statistic to distract the boss. Right. And then she ended up saying it completely, and she was saying that, did you know that single men are killing married men at twice the rate or whatever? Some stupid shit. And it's like, I'm a sucker for that kind of comedy, man. It's stupid, but it's hilarious. Like even the lobsters as like a door knocker was so fun as well.
No, yeah, it's again, it does the tropes of like building stuff and kind of having a payoff in the most surprising way. Like you said, like the lobster thing. You think it's just a funny bit of it flying away, but nope, it comes right back around. It's great.
Shall we then get into since we're obviously talking about episode 1, that creepy moment that happened at dinner?
So one thing actually I didn't notice I didn't notice watching it, but people were saying that the laugh track of the show, like it goes on in like weird moments. Did you notice that?
I just watched it again just a few minutes ago. The laugh track I thought was turned off for that particular sequence where Wanda's being asked about, why are you here? Where did you come from? Why don't you have any kids? Mm-hmm. And both she and Vision are at a loss. And that whole sequence, I don't remember there ever even being a laugh track. Are you saying that some people are saying that there was like odd uses of a laugh track in that?
Throughout the episode, I mean, that's like the first creepy thing or weird thing people noticed of the episode was that the laugh track would go off on certain weird moments that there really was no comedy happening. So like, I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Maybe, but I highly doubt it. And oh God, I don't want this to come off the bad way. That kind of happens in sitcoms. Okay. I think if I were to just guess what the people are getting at that you're referencing or what you've seen, I'm just going to assume, maybe I assume incorrectly, that maybe they're just not that, I don't know, exposed to the sitcom genre, because the laugh track is used frequently. And I think what they may be thinking is that, well, that joke wasn't funny, so why was there a laugh track? Or that wasn't that funny, why is there a laugh track? But maybe a laugh track is used for every single, I think, humorous moment. Although that they could have a point. If I were to guess, I think I just have to say, and this is in no way to dismiss, of course, anyone. This show is trying to appeal to as many people as possible. But because the first couple of episodes are sitcoms, that may be kind of impossible. Because on the offset, I think you and I have already encountered a lot of reactions on social media. Not the majority. The majority are very overwhelmingly positive. But there have been, let's just say, more than a few reactions to where they're just puzzled and at a loss for why it's a sitcom. And then in some cases, they just don't understand the fundamental components of what makes the sitcom genre, and that they interpret it to be false. Like I've seen a lot of reactions to where they think that the corny, cheesy comedy lines were meant to be funny. They really aren't. They're part of the sitcom thing, and not every sitcom has amazing one-liners. They have jokes of the era. They have like sayings and expressions that you wouldn't understand. And so what I'm picking up is they just don't I think I saw a review by someone who doesn't live in this country. And may not have at all any experience or exposure to sitcoms, and that they took everything at face value. And that one of the critiques this person had was, why does it have a laugh track? I don't like being told when to laugh. So understand that I feel that, and I understand, and then also just us being a little bit more patient than perhaps we should. But I mean, I get it. It's different. It's a sitcom. It's not for everybody these days. And there could be a lot of younger people who have never seen a sitcom in their life. And they're like looking at this shit and like, what the fuck did they do? Mm-hmm. At the same time, there are other people who just want to see action sequences and people beat the shit out of each other, explosions and punching. In which case, go fuck yourself. Please go fuck yourself. Because man, you're telling me that you can't. Every part of a Marvel thing has to be the same, like action. Like what that tells me is that all you really care about is the action-oriented stuff and none of the character stuff. I understand that Marvel movies and blockbusters, because they're mostly action oriented, and because yes, they come out of these big studios and they're they have this aspect to them that are made by committee, that they have certain limitations on what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this is just a me thing, David, and maybe you feel the same way as well. Putting the action to the side, which I feel is, for the most part, great in every sense of the word with these movies. Let's just say Marvel movies. I'll just give you an example. My favorite moments in Avengers Endgame really wasn't the fighting. They were the moments that accentuated the characters, right? So, like, what are the moments that land for me? Natasha breaking down in front of Steve, or Natasha sacrificing herself to save the world or her family. Steve picking up the broken shield to face an army that's about to annihilate all of existence. You know, Tony sacrificing himself, basically, you know, with the I am Iron Man moment. Or at the end of the film when, you know, or I'm sorry, in other moments where Steve sees Peggy in the past and is looking at her longingly. Or the end of the film when they're embracing and finally kiss. That's the stuff that for me, is what makes those movies work. And I don't know, I guess this idea that because I think I heard this about around the time the movie came out. Someone I know said to me this. He's a little younger than we are, but he said that, you know, Endgame was like pretty much boring until the action kicked in the third act, and I was just like left completely stupefied. What? You mean all the character work and all the moments that, you know, let the actors breathe and give you some really wonderful stuff that was boring? I don't know. Am I going on a rant here, or do I think I'm just...
No. This is I wanted to bring this up too in a way. I remember when Endgame came out, some people are I know some people that are getting kind of tired of like the whole action stuff. I keep hearing people saying like if the movie was just 2 hours of them interacting, just like talking about whatever, they would love that. And that's exactly what you're getting with this show. And some people just can't get into it for some reason. Like, it's so weird for me. And it's just getting kind of annoying too, because the people who, like, there was a moment before like Infinity War where you just kept hearing in every review, it's a Marvel movie. It's fine. It's a Marvel movie. It's fine. And I'm like, we can't hit a limit of the standard. Like, we kind of need to spread it out. And I think, and that's what the comics do too. Like, you got one comic where it's just like super dark shit going on and everything, but then you got the ones who are just hilarious, stupid comedy of one side of the comic. So they need to really branch out the whole Marvel universe now more than ever, because no one's interested anymore with this universe, or at least not a lot of people are interested in this universe anymore, because we got our finale, you know? And so, I don't know, just, it is annoying seeing people that like just cannot get into this show because it's not explosions or something like that. So, yeah, I agree with everything you were saying.
It's also, I mean, like I said at the top, I mean, okay, sure, the sitcom vibe may not gel with you, but you're telling me you'd rather have Wanda murdering people instead of her having these beautiful, heartwarming embraces with Vision?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that means nothing to you? I'm just at a loss. And notice how our review of WandaVision so far, and I want to make a note of this, and I had a feeling this is how it was going to go. We are an hour into this WandaVision recap. We haven't touched episode 2 yet, but we're basically having our overall feelings about why we love this. And we're talking about the story We're talking about the characters. We're talking about how it makes us feel. Notice what we haven't been spending our time talking about, like you see every other review on the internet. The Easter eggs, the connections, the references. We'll mention those. Mm-hmm. Those are cool, and we'll talk about them. But I guess this is just, showing our priorities. That was the extra stuff that made it real cool. Like, and you know, that was like the cherry on top. But the meat of this was the character work. You know, that I feel like that's what in my view, that's what makes these genre stories shine. You know, is when they can stumble onto something that's really human and beautiful. And that's a reoccurring theme that we keep finding ourselves in with fandom. And it's just, I'm sorry, it was hilarious and aggravating all at the same time how we had to endure 8 weeks of The Mandalorian basically being the exact same thing every single week. Literally the exact same thing every single week. But you can't put up with 2 20-minute episodes of WandaVision. And by the way, the 20-minute episode length, in case that wasn't clear, is part of the immersion, you know, experience of this, because that's sitcom length. I always get like, I don't know, I always laugh when people complain about episode length, as if that like has any bearing on the quality of it. Watch it and see for yourself if it's long enough or short enough. And I think both of the episodes were as long as they needed to be for what they were going with.
No, yeah, it's always a weird conversation, because like if it goes too long, people are saying it's boring. But if it doesn't go long enough, then people want more. They wish it was longer. But then I'm like, okay, then I did its job. Like, you want more, you know? So it's a weird thing.
It's strange. But yeah, but I guess we started to talk about the moment, but then we got a little bit lost with the.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry. I think I probably indulged it far too much, but I just needed to get that off my chest, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that as the weeks go by. But the moment, let's just say, as far as how well done it was great. It was creepy. It was kind of scary too, how it came out of nowhere. Like, I guess like upon further examination, Wanda has kind of like a split personality, and like the facade that you're seeing, the sitcom Wanda is mainly what you're seeing, but then Wanda herself may in fact be aware and in control of everything that's going on, because the boss just out of nowhere starts choking as soon as he's like pressuring her for answers. And with the wife, she's like, stop it. And I thought that was weird. Like, are you really telling your husband to stop choking? That seems pretty, like, I was taking it literally. And then I realized, because she turns to Wanda and she says, stop it, as if she herself understands that Wanda's the puppet master here, and Vision himself does nothing, which is uncharacteristic of Vision. He literally does nothing and is looking at Wanda the entire time until she was like, save him, and then he saves him. What did you make of that moment?
No, yeah, I was thinking, in my mind, it was sort of like, because I've seen that trope too, where like something happens to the boss, and then the husband does something that either saves his life or just kind of like, I don't know, just does something to impress the boss, and it's like, and it, you know, this whole crazy night leads to something good. That's where I thought it was gonna lead to. But because she had these questions of like, where did you come from? Like, how long have you guys known each other? Just all these questions that's kind of breaking her reality, that it took her a while to like kind of process what was going on. And so that's kind of the way I saw it. I didn't really see it as her, I don't know, being malicious or something towards him or anything like that. But yeah, and so
it seemed like an accident.
Yeah, it seemed like an accident. I think that's what it was supposed to be. But it is crazy seeing though that one actress, I can't remember her name, the wife,
Right.
just kind of like, it's almost like like she's almost about to cry or something, and she is like almost begging to Wanda to stop it. But then also it was cool seeing Vision, like he wants to do something but can't. Like he literally can't do anything.
He's like almost, I don't know, frozen.
Yeah, it's just he feels uncomfortable. For me, that's how it seemed like, at least. And so it was a really crazy scene, and I love that little detail though of like when he finally saves him and like he reaches down his throat. You know, before whenever he did anything with his powers, it was just like a little sparkle thrown in. But no, this time you get the whole, like, I don't know, like a light line or whatever. Like, I don't know, it basically how it is in the movies. How his powers work, and so it getting like closer and closer to the real reality of it. It was really cool.
No, yeah, it was great. And then as soon as it began, it was over. And then they leave, and that pretty much is the end of the episode from there. With episode 1, great first episode. I'll tell you, it's interesting, going on like which I prefer. I think the second one generally is regarded to be better. It is more, they have an amazing hysterical sequence in episode 2 that we'll get to, that I think really stuck with me. But like, I really loved both of these. I mean, and this one too as well. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and start off into episode 2. We get another opening sequence, a different one. And I think what they're doing really nicely is, as every episode is, as we're going through the episodes, we're basically going through the eras. In some ways, and tell me if it feels a little bit deja vu, but it's almost like S.H.I.E.L.D. season 7 again, right? Where like every episode we're basically going through a different decade, and because if you're not aware, in the with S.H.I.E.L.D. season 7, they had a time travel storyline which allowed them to play into the different eras of television, which I think really energized that season and gave it like a whole new breath of fresh air. And David and I especially we were cracking each other up with that show, especially in the first few weeks. So it feels kind of like that. And it also is really appropriate that we're going through the eras of television. And this is, this is the first official television show produced by Marvel Studios. I want to phrase it that way because some people are going to throw a conniption fit if I say that it's the first Marvel show, myself included, because it very much is not the first Marvel show. We've had many, many Marvel shows at this point, and whereas if you're concerned if the other Marvel shows are in the MCU, I don't give a fuck. That's up for you to decide. There are S.H.I.E.L.D. stands that will say to me that will kill me, basically fight me to the death. It's in the MCU. And you know what? Yeah, I can kind of see it, but I also don't care, so leave me alone. But I wanted to make those stipulations very clear. So it is the first Marvel Studios produced television series where Kevin Feige himself is personally involved, if I can make that as clear as possible. And it's very appropriate, although not intended. The first show to actually drop on Disney Plus was scheduled to be Falcon and Winter Soldier, but they had, I think, production delays or some sort. So this wasn't intended, but it actually is kind of perfect. And this is a show that they're introducing the television medium, because we're basically like having a celebration of television, which I love. And so we start off with the episode 2 with another song by the Lopez's, WandaVision, WandaVision. I love it. It's great. And it very clearly is playing on the opening sequence of Bewitched, which is another one of those. And instead of this being in the 50s, we have some very subtle and in some cases very overt transitions into the 60s at this point. One of the things, the most overt example, right, was with the beds. So the beds were separated, as you would see in I Love Lucy. The husband and the wife would have their own bed, and then through circumstances of them being scared, Wanda puts the beds together, and then they have sexy time. I don't know how else I can say it. They have relations with each other, which is, I don't know if you've noticed or if this has been made aware to you, but there have been these long-standing subset of Marvel fans, or maybe not Marvel fans, but let's say film fans, that have this weird obsession with Marvel movies not featuring enough sex.
It is kind of funny though that this is like the first time that there's, I think it's the first time that there's some
if we're not counting the first Iron Man movies, because I think Pepper and Tony had but aside from that, I mean, you're not far off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
sure.
yeah, that's so. I guess this is like they threw a bone, because I know the some of the other Marvel shows had pretty overt pornographic sequences, pretty much. So that was nice, and it was fun for those characters to do that. So that was one of the more overt ones. One of the more subtle ones, and I did not realize this. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Wanda wears a dress in the first episode, right? And in the second episode, she's wearing pants. Not to say, of course, that, women didn't wear, I guess, pants in the 50s. I think they were more common, maybe transitioning into the 60s.
Yeah.
Did you also notice the apartment kind of changed? Not the apartment. I'm sorry. The
house.
The house. Yeah, the house that they live in. The main floor, the downstairs floor.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go back and look at it side by side, from episode 1 to episode 2, it looks completely different. Like some things are just not in the same place that they used to be. Like it's moved around, and I guess that's supposed to. I mean, Vision and Wanda can do whatever they want.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of so like, if you want a story reason, but like, I found that to be really interesting. And then more characters are introduced into here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with a theory off the bat, and I'll share this from Mr. Martinez. And it starts off the episode, right, with Wanda hears, and I think throughout the episode, she hears these loud noises. And I think it was pretty obvious that when they revealed that it was a branch, that really wasn't what that noise was, because it was really, like, scarily kind of loud.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in the episode, she finds this colorized helicopter with the insignia of SWORD, which is a agency in the Marvel comics. And maybe you might have thought this as well, but Peter's feeling was that basically that was a SWORD unit breaking in to this dimension that Wanda has created, and they've all kind of been absorbed by the dimension, and they've assimilated into these characters that Wanda has made for them, unsubconsciously, whatever that's called.
No, yeah, I've heard that theory, and that would make sense. This is kind of what I wish they would put more of into the mystery, just to kind of like, just tiny little explanations that like can lead us to the mystery of it. I got a feeling though that they're gonna like just throw in everything that they got of the mystery into one episode, probably, like telling us,
right,
like going doing like a flashback of like, oh, this is how it all started and all that, which I wouldn't mind in the end.
Well, if you go back and watch the episodes again, there's a lot of really interesting lines that, with a second or third viewing, they play a little different. The more obvious one with this episode is the constant creepy in unison repeating of "for the children." I mean, at first I thought that was like oh, that's just a thing. It's funny. But like, the more I hear people talk about it, the more it kind of makes sense that maybe that's maybe leading to something. And some actually, I've theories have thought that Agnes, the neighbor, is somehow playing a role in instigating Wanda to have kids, which at the end of the episode it is revealed that she's pregnant. And so there could be a force within, whether it be Agnes herself or others in there, that are trying to get Wanda to have kids. That could be one of the theories, or one of the issues that are happening.
Yeah, I remember seeing a theory of who she is, and she's basically like a witch in the comics. That's what they're guessing.
Right.
That's who she is. And one thing that kind of makes me think that it is that there's going to be an episode later on where Vision, he's like in his full like Vision costume, not the like that cheesy looking
from
one.
a trailer that we saw, right?
Yeah,
They released a trailer.
but he's talking to her, and she goes, "Am I dead?" Like her reality breaks, and you know who she is. But I think her costume is a witch. I know it's like very small detail, but like I don't know. To me, so far from what I'm seeing, from what I've heard in videos, it's not really much of a. It can't really be much of a coincidence, you know. And so I think she is going to be playing a bigger role in everything, which I don't know. It's just I mean, that's the one thing I'm really excited about is like all of these series people are making might actually have like a payoff, hopefully.
Yeah.
At the end of this season, not like 2 seasons later, like a Mandalorian.
Yeah. And I mean, I have to assume that anything that's being set up is going to be like for this, because at the moment, I feel like WandaVision is being looked at as a mini series, not so much as a seasonal show. So I think this is all we're getting. Okay. I mean, you never say never, right? Yeah. But like, I think as far as how it was written, I think it was designed to be what it is, you know, which is what we're getting. How about that moment with Dot, or Dottie, whatever her name is, when this is the moment where they're both kind of distracted by the radio, and like one of the agents is like, "Wanda, who's doing this to you?" And then she cuts herself on by, breaking a glass. And she was saying something like, "I don't believe you, that you don't mean us no harm." Just more of this like creepy shit that's going on there. I don't know. I feel like there's enough. There's enough of they're teasing quite a bit of stuff that's going to come. I mean, there's 9 episodes in total. Like I feel like people would not be feeling this way if, I don't know, if they dropped all of the episodes at once.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I wanted to mention. They definitely filmed this as a way to binge watch it, but for some reason it's going to be weekly. And I think that is the big problem for me, is that it's going to be weekly, and usually with any other show that's like a weekly episode, like you get one thing that's like very satisfying at the end of the episode, like The Good Place. We mentioned you said it many times, like every single episode, like you just want to watch the next one right after. This one doesn't really do that much. But that scene that you were talking about, I think, for me at least, I feel like what they were trying to set up is kind of make you think she's the villain. Almost. I think that's kind of what they were trying to do.
A little bit of a misdirect.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to say if that's what it is, just because, again, we're like really deep into this Marvel universe. Like, we'll watch theories, and so for like a regular audience member who just kind of like watches it as soon as they come out, who knows what they're thinking.
Yeah, and it's also, I love how you mentioned that about like the differences between, because we're living in an age of television, the golden age of television, where we have streaming. This is obviously on Disney Plus, and I think Peter, I agree with you to an extent. I think Peter maybe wholeheartedly agrees with you. Let me tell you this: I personally am happy that we get to do this, talk about this show on a week-to-week basis, because I think with The Mandalorian, it has proven successful that you can keep the show in the news and you can keep it making headlines every single week. And I feel from that business model, from Disney's perspective, I think that makes most sense. Regardless of whether or not it was made to be a binge show. I think clearly WandaVision was written to be a binge show, and it's not going to be that way. And I guess you'll have to ask me in a couple of weeks how I'm feeling to see if it's suffering for me or not. But at the moment, I don't mind. I don't mind talking about WandaVision every single week, especially if a lot of the episodes are going to be in this kind of a format, you know? Like, I don't mind because I don't think it'll get grating on me. We'll see. What will get a little bit annoying is if people you know how some fans like give it a little time and they'll start burning the place down if they don't get enough like crumbs thrown their way, and then a backlash starts, and that would be a fucking disaster if that happens. I would be so pissed. So you're right. You run the risk of maybe doing that. But I definitely feel like it's obvious that they're building something big for Agnes, you know. She's connected in some big way somehow. And at the end of the episode, there's this guy that comes out of a manhole, and he's wearing a bee suit, and he has the sword symbol behind him. I don't know. I don't care. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's weird, but at the same time, you're kind of like, okay, what's going on here? But I mean, the really cool thing though was when Wanda sees them, she just goes no, and she completely like turns back time and changes the scene, I guess. And so that was the really big thing, I guess, of those two episodes, is that it's basically a confirmation that she's manipulating the whole thing. And so I guess that was cool.
Ultimately, she's in control of this. And there are moments where she realizes that and she does that. So the comedy was top notch here.
Yes.
Just some things I wanted to mention. So again, we're going back to Paul Bettany. So Vision is going to meet with a neighborhood watch group or something. And look, that whole sequence is funny. But the one that just made me laugh so hard was when he's handed a piece of gum, and he said like, "Oh, I think it's used for mastication." That means to chew. But the guy that handed him the stick of gum was like, "Oh no, I don't do that." In the most hilarious way, thinking that he meant masturbation. Yeah, that
was great.
That was great, man. And
and then like he just gets all loopy about it when he swallows it, and I kind of I kind of like to think that happens just because Wanda has no idea what would happen if he actually ate, and so she's just like, he probably just gets loopy if that happens or something. And I like how when she finally takes the gum out, he tries to make a joke, but he's just like, I guess I'm funnier when I'm eating. It was great.
No, man, like the physical comedy there was hilarious. I mean, basically it was drunk Vision. I mean, all of it made me laugh hard. It was so funny. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than it was hilarious. Yes. I think some of the lines from the crowd cracked me up. Like one of the guys goes like, "That was my grandmother's piano."
Actually,
I
like the whole magic show portion of it, and I know people were saying that it was basically a Bewitched episode, but again, I didn't grow up watching that era, but it did remind me of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And basically, that's I'm just trying to draw other comparisons, I guess.
Right. The 90s show, right? Yeah. Not the Netflix one, which is, I think, a different
Not
iteration.
the Netflix show. It's very different.
Right. Yeah, I think I've seen it. It's more of a sitcom, basically.
It is.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say, man, about the episode. I think I'm blanking out, but like I think all the physical comedy aspects worked. I was laughing so hard. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this so much. Oh, so I guess I'm talking about some other Easter eggs. What do you make of the commercials? We got 2 commercials. The first one, Stark Industries toaster.
One thing I didn't notice the first time, but when like they put the thing down to like toast it, you hear the Iron Man beam thing. I don't know what's it called. Yeah. But I thought that was really cool. That
was cool, yeah.
And then you get the red light. You're just constantly seeing red for some reason in this black and white world. But yeah, no, I like the commercials. That one lady though that's in them, creepy vibes for me. Just like weirdly, it's almost like that. That's like almost like that little bit is like some Twilight Zone, portion. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like it's like
no, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think that in particular, the actors that we see in the commercials are perfectly cast, because they just look like people who stepped out of the 50s. But they definitely do some interesting angles where they do a close up on her. That's a little unsettling because she looks dead at you, and you don't really know what the point of this is. I guess we won't know until we know. Then there's Strucker.
Yeah, the Strucker watch, the little Hydra symbol on it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's another thing. I guess that set people off because some people are thinking that Hydra is going to be a part of this show, which just sounds like... No?
Nah.
How? Why?
Nah, I think we're done with Hydra, at least for the Marvel Universe, Marvel shows, and everything. It's just, I think it's basically Strucker is connected to Wanda, and Strucker was from Hydra, so that's all it is, I think.
Yes.
Just little connections of her past. That's what it is.
Yeah. That's exactly what I imagined. I think we've run out of things to say.
One small more thing. The Agnes character. One other reason why I think she's gonna be big is because, like I mentioned in the beginning, she's really like hamming it up the 50s acting.
Oh yeah.
And I just realized I think she's the only one that's really hamming it up. And so I think it's just kind of like trying to show you just kind of like how just not in sync she is with this world. Like she really is out of place from it. I don't know.
Right.
It could be something like that. I just realized it.
No, I think you're correct. And I think it's definitely leading to something big. Although what that is, I'm not so sure. But I guess I'm just in the minority. The breadcrumbs that we have so far are more than sufficient. If anything, a little bit much for my taste. I am enjoying this ride. I really am. And I really do hope that we don't abandon this format too soon, because it's really good. I mean, we do want to keep the story moving. We do want to get it to, where it's going to go. But I have high hopes for where this is going, So WandaVision, you can catch it every single Friday, I think, on Disney Plus. And then the following week, David and I will be back and we'll be recapping it. Before we go, David, I wanted to say something. I don't know if have you noticed that, because we had said at the top of this that you and I are big fans of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? It has been simultaneously hilarious and depressing, although not at all surprising, that almost every single YouTube reviewer, and it seems as if Disney gave everybody but us screeners. That's how it feels like, considering like the wave of reviews I've seen for the show, which is fine. We're nobody. And we say bad things about them all the time. So I mean, I get it. But saying like this is the first MCU content or the first Marvel content we've gotten since Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh, no.
You haven't seen this?
I haven't seen that. Are you serious?
You haven't seen? No, man. I am 1,000% serious. Like, and I mean, like, all of them just keep, you know, honestly, verbatim repeating this. Like, it just like, I'm so happy with this because this is the first MCU stuff. This is the first Marvel stuff we're getting since like 2019. It's been over a year. And they say that with it, like, they say that so convincingly that oh, they just completely forgot this other thing existed and that it ended and that it was actually in 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I was in a fever dream, but it's like you and I spent 12 weeks, I think 12 or 13 weeks covering the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is very much not only a Marvel project, but according to some, there's very deep ties to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, you know, even if the movies don't recognize it, the shows do offer, you know, a lot of it back. So, I mean, I say simultaneously hilarious and depressing because, like, that is ultimately part of the legacy of the show. It's just like, people just forget about it. And I mean, and I should say, it isn't at all surprising, because these people never covered the show, and if they did, it was like maybe in season 1, and then they gave up halfway through. We know we know how it goes. We know how it went, and we know how it is. And yeah, so many of these top critics completely leave it out as if it doesn't exist. And I'll share some of the screenshots with you, but like, no, I've noticed that several times. However, this is some good news though, and I hadn't mentioned this. For however many of those top critics ignored flat out the existence of this series, this wonderful little engine that you and I love, our show here, did end up getting a ranked placement among, get this, 5 publications end of the year lists for 2020 as being among the best television. I didn't see that coming. I literally thought like this would be ignored, but like, and I do believe I shared some of those with you. You at least saw those headlines. Yeah. Like headlines like like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was some of the best television in 2020, or like one even went so far as to say that it was the best series finale of 2020, which it's a big thing to say. Yeah. There was some really great finales in 2020. I'm talking about people like Collider, TV Line, The Guardian. These are like no like joke publications. These are like top of the tippity top here. And I'll just point it as a point of as a reference of pride, shall I say, if that's an even expression, because there were some other shows that I am sure are very good, but I don't necessarily associate them with being like mine, as I associate them being with more along the lines of other of our members' tastes. Like, for example, BoJack Horseman, I think would be right up Peter's alley, and it is, and we have had that show. And then with Steven Universe, which is very much a show that Kyle is very much in love with. I don't know. I just found it personally cosmically poetic in a way that S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up getting the top prize there several times over. And so that proves I wasn't crazy. And that proves you weren't crazy. And the show did exist. And it's on Netflix. And go watch it. And it is the very first Marvel show. Because I needed to correct the record because there's a lot of misinformation out there, as I said. And it's unfortunate, but that's why we're here. You know? I think we're one of the very few podcasts that just like, we're bridging together all of the elements of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether it be like the TV shows that people forget, you know, or the movies. And I think, I don't know, I really enjoyed this review, and I think we got a lot of great commentary on this and why we loved it. And we hope that we continue to love it, and we hope that those listening continue to love WandaVision, having a great time. Again, every week, anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Castbox.fm, YouTube, and so much more. Stand in the spotlight. Bye-bye. Bye.